Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to a brand new video here on the channel. I'm currently still in my house in Myanmar and I'm actually leaving for Canada next month, so I figured before I leave for good, I might as well take the time to make one last video with these physical books, even though most of the books I read are on my Kindle, which I'm obviously going to be taking with me. But with that being said, in today's video, I'm going to be covering exactly why I read 4 books a month, exactly how I decide what books to read, and at the end, I'm going to be talking about a secret method that I use to almost double my reading speed while maintaining or possibly even improving my retention rate while doing so. So moving on to the first point, which is exactly why I read 4 books every single month. It's quite funny to me the fact that, with TikTok and Instagram and all these different memes and things circulating online, reading has almost become like this cliche kind of self-improvement habit. The world is so incredibly complex and life has so many little kind of nuances and intricacies to the point where if you solely rely on your own judgments, your own experiences to guide you in life, you're eventually going to end up with this massive knowledge gap that's going to come around and eat you up eventually. Quite frankly, it's the harsh truth, but you have to accept that you really know nothing in this life, especially if you're young. Now, you may think that you have everything figured out, but trust me, you really don't. It's a realization that everyone makes at some point in their life, so you may as well acknowledge it and accept it now. Like I was saying earlier, life has so many little intricacies and nuances and details, and there's literally nothing else in the world where you can spend an hour of your time every single day, maybe even 30 minutes, and literally understand an entire person's life story, the things they went through, what they observed, the mistakes they made, the lessons they learned. With each book you read, you're literally consuming an entire person's perspective on life and specific topics like stoicism, women, sexual desire, business, people. Like there's just so much information out there to consume, and you can almost compare reading to like collecting infinity stones of knowledge. The world is such an incredibly complicated place, and even more so when you're ambitious, so even if reading books won't solve every problem you have in your life, it's a good compass to have and it can almost act as sort of like your North Star. I'm moving on to the next section, which is how I decide what books to read. Now I hate to say this, but choosing what book to read is really up to you. Like I don't understand these people out there who go on YouTube and search top 10 books out there to be successful and read each and every one of them and just read each and every book they get their hands on. Like one thing you have to understand is you're not getting paid per book that you read. You're not getting like 50 cents per page that you flip. It simply doesn't matter if you read 11 books a month, but you hated each and every one of them and retained no information whatsoever. I'm not telling you to go to a corner of a library and read a random book on God knows what, ashwagandha and its application in Aztec rituals or something. All I'm telling you is before you actually pick up a book, look into it. Sit down somewhere in your library, flip through the pages, read the back of the book, actually find out what the book is about, and then determine if it aligns with your specific goals and what you're struggling with right now in your life. If your girlfriend just cheated on you, then cool, you should probably read Where of the Superior Man by David Data. If you're struggling with finding true happiness and fulfillment in life, you should probably read the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Identify your flaws, identify your knowledge gaps, and actually go out there intentionally finding a book that fits your specific purpose, not just one that's trending. So now it's time for the bonus section where I'm going to share with you guys a reading strategy I actually recently discovered that helped me double my reading speed while still maintaining my retention while doing so. Now I'd say I personally read at a pretty average pace. I'm a pretty fast reader by nature, but I try to slow things down. I try to reread phrases and words in different sections to make sure I get them in my head. On average, I read at a pace of about 2 minutes per page, so that means if I read for an hour, I'll end up finishing anywhere from 30 to 40 pages on average. Now I actually discovered this method when I was reading the 40 Laws of Power, because for me this book is quite massive. This specific copy is like 600 plus pages. I believe it's like 650 or something like that. But moreover, I actually feel like a lot of points in this book and a lot of chapters and laws are actually quite repetitive because a lot of the laws tie into each other and you can kind of fill in the gaps yourself. So the way that this book is actually structured is for each of the 48 laws in this book, it usually starts off with a general overview of the law followed by a transgression of the law, which is basically a circumstance or example in the past when someone broke that law. Then there are multiple observances followed by their respective interpretations, and at the end there's a keys to power section, and then the chapter usually ends off with a reversal. For some laws, Robert Greene, who's the author of this book, adds like 5 to 6 different observances together with their respective interpretations. So you can see how this book gets quite repetitive and boring over time. So I felt as if I was spending and wasting too much of my time reading, quite frankly, fluff. So what I did was I went to YouTube, I found the audiobook for 48 Laws of Power, I set the speed to 1.5 times, I listened to it, took mental notes of the sections that kind of intrigued me or caught my eye. Then only after that I would go back to the physical copy and skim read the sections that I felt were important to me. By using this strategy, I went from taking 40 minutes to read a 20-page chapter to spending 15 minutes on the audiobook and then 5 skim reading to the physical pages, so a total of 20 minutes, basically doubling my reading speed. So to summarize, if you want to use this method, the first thing you do is go to YouTube and listen to the audiobook version at 1.5 times speed, and you take mental notes of the parts that you feel intrigue you or are important to you. And then after that, you go back to the physical copy and then you find those specific sections and then you skim read those once again. The only downside is for some books out there aren't really any publicly accessible audiobook versions, so in those cases, it's probably better for you to just stick to regular reading. Most of you watching this video probably aren't so deep into the self-improvement book rabbit hole to the point where you'll be reading books that aren't easily accessible on the internet. So just look hard enough and you'll probably find at least one copy of the book you're reading. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, this is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and found it informative. If you have any questions regarding books or even want to share some tips or recommendations regarding books, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section below. I actually reply to each and every one of your comments. So yeah, I would love to chat with some of you guys.